Chopper Delta, preparing to drop off at area E95070. Over.
What are they?
Waiting orders. Over. All units proceed to Richmond and Victoria. All right.
Let's do it. Let's move. Go, 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 go! Fire! Come and get me! Son of a... Don't give up! There are too many of them! Don't hold back! Go! Where are they? Where did they come from? Take this! Die! You want some more?
All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us on tonight's episode of Resident Evil, where we cover everything Resident Evil that includes the movies, games, and so forth. So thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you live. To introduce you, I am Brian Enright. You can follow me at The Hard Jew at Facebook at Brian Enright, Twitter at The Hard Jew, and you can follow me at Instagram at Hard Jew. Up next, we have Baron Craze. Baron, good evening.
Greetings all. You can follow me on Twitter under Baron_Craze. Also look me up on Facebook under Baron Craze, and also the Baron's Crib.
All right, awesome. Thank you thank you for joining us tonight, Baron. Up next, we have Jared Letourneau. Jared, good evening.
Good evening. Hey there, boils and ghouls. You guys can follow me on Facebook at Jared Letourneau, or if you choose to do so on Twitter, Zombie_Survivor.
Thank you very much, Jared. And up next, we have Morgan.
Sup? You can follow me on Twitter at Morgan_Jewel_S.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And last but not least for tonight's episode, we have Rayzilla.
Hey there, horror fans, boys and girls. It's your old Uncle Rayzilla coming to you somewhat sedated from my secret lair, located somewhere off exit 18E of the New Jersey Turnpike. If you feel the need to follow me on Twitter, please check me out at RayzillaNJ. Back to you, Brian.
All right, thank you very much, Ray. So, we have a great show for you tonight. We're going to be covering everything Resident Evil, if we haven't already talked about that right now. But before we get into it, we have our usual lineup, starting off with Jared Letourneau's Bloody Streaming Roulette. Jared, explain to them what Bloody Streaming Roulette is and what movie you have for this week.
For those of you joining us that don't know what that is, on Netflix and Hulu and other streaming services, there's tons and tons of horror films, and it's hard to choose which one to watch. My job is to blindly pick one, roulette style, and watch it and review it. And if it's a winner or if it's a dreadful, downright loser. Last week, I reviewed the third installment of the Cabin Fever franchise. It was a prequel called Patient Zero. Had some decent gore bits, but ultimately it was a complete waste of time. I was glad it was over when it was over, but it did have some decent gory stuff.
Well, now there's a review that can go on the marquee, I'll tell you. I was glad it was over.
But
Please
I drew
tell us more.
yeah, I drew hopefully a winner for this week. I've heard a few people talk about it in horror circles. It's 2014's Starry Eyes. I guess it's a multi-genre movie, fantasy, horror, and drama. Netflix gives it a 6 out of 10, or I guess that's IMDb. Sorry. A hopeful young starlet uncovers the ominous origins of the Hollywood elite and enters into a deadly agreement in exchange for fame and fortune. Dun dun dun.
Interesting.
There you
Yeah.
go. With dramatic music.
You guys can read my thoughts on Friday on the website. Check it out.
All right, thank you very much, Jared. Up next, we have a new segment we just brought to you guys last week, actually, and now this week we have it again for you. We have Uncle Rayzilla with his Syndicate news, but tonight we have the 2017 horror movie update. Is that correct, Ray?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody. It's great to have. It's great to be here on the Syndicate tonight. And by the way, before we go through the list of these, this is a list of theatrical films that we can expect to see in the year 2017, and it's a quick rundown. Given that Resident Evil: The Final Chapter opens this Friday, I'm going to do a quick rundown of all the films that are going to be coming out this year. There's not much news since TCA and Nappy are over. There wasn't really much to report on the TV and series side, so here we go. Actually, just before we went live, the good Baron had corrected me on one of the first films released of 2017. So, and by the way, if you're listening and watching the Horror Syndicate right now, you should be writing a lot of these titles down. Jared just gave you an interesting title to go check out, and you should be copying some of this stuff down. But Baron, help me out. What was the title that I had missing on my list?
It's called the Bye Bye Man. It came out, I think, last week. It was technically supposed to be based off of a true story. However, if you look into the details, true story is as much as getting the story from a drunken friend for the background on that movie. So it's not really based off of true events at all.
Yes, you got to watch those. You got to watch those based on true events sort of monikers. They play a little fast and loose with those, don't they? Thank you, Baron. Thank you for that. So really, that was. And what was the name of it again? I'm sorry.
It was called the Bye Bye Man. It came out January 13th. That was the date. It's a PG-13 film.
And was that a theatrical?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. How about that? Well, then immediately following that, then on its heels, we have, this Friday, we have coming up Resident Evil, and they promise that this one is called The Final Chapter. And, horror fans, we've heard this before. Rodeo before on this moniker of The Final Chapter. So we shall see. This is the 6th sequel. And it's already been released internationally. I think it's already made about 35 million internationally, so it's got a head start elsewhere in the United States. So that's going to be coming out this Friday, the 27th. Next to come out is going to be Rings, obviously part of the Ring franchise. This is set to be released on the 3rd of February. And this movie is actually set. It's set 13 years after the events of the first film, The Ring, and the budget for this one was actually $33 million, which is actually considered much lower than the budgets for the first two films. I think $33 million is a lot of money to make. A lot of money for a budget for one of these Ring movies. I mean, how much? Yeah. How much production is in there that it's $33 million? All of us here at the Syndicate have screened films made for a fraction of that amount, and be just as entertaining and just as scary. So I don't know, $33 million. I salute when you get out to the box office. Hopefully you'll make some money. the next one of note is a film. I hope I'm getting the title right on this one. Double X. Has anyone heard about this one? This is the all-female horror anthology.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Am I getting the title on that correct?
Yep, Double X.
Double X. Okay, great. This is going to come out February 17th. Again, this is a theatrical, February 17th. This has multiple directors, and this is an all-female horror anthology featuring short films from Karen Kusuma, Jennifer Lynch, St. Vincent, and others. So that looks to be really, really, really interesting. And again, boys and ghouls, that's on February 17th. On March 10th, Raw. I mean, maybe you've heard a little bit of the buzz about this movie, and let me tell you, nothing gets your old Rayzilla, Uncle Rayzilla, feeling good like a good cannibal movie. This is a French cannibal movie. I know the Baron appreciates a good cannibal movie, right, Baron?
Oh yes, something tasty to sink your teeth into.
And it's coming in, and it's coming March 10th, so it almost heralds spring to me, doesn't it? A good cannibal film. It's refreshing in that way. Anyway, this is a French cannibal movie that has caused multiple people to pass out or vomit during festival screenings due to its graphic content, which is always a good sign, boys and girls. Remember that. Any sort of digestive disruption, reaction, disruption, discharge, if you will, is always a sign of quality horror, boys and girls. So remember that. Coming later on in the month of March, a movie called Life, directed by Daniel Espinosa. This is an international crew discovers life on Mars. This is with Ryan Reynolds, Jake Gyllenhaal. This is being considered a horror film. It sounds a little science fiction horror, something in the vein of Alien, perhaps. And that's coming on March 24th, later in the year. Then we start getting into the big tent pole seasons, when the big studios start to roll out the big films. This is going to be this particular year, 2017. Not to jump off the subject of horror, but this is going to be the first year that we're going to see 3 Marvel films come out. Marvel has never really released 3 titles in one calendar year before, and so 2017 is going to see 3 of them. So it's going to be a tough year for other movies to make some dough and get some eyeballs, because those Marvel movies are just monsters. Just get out of the way. What is there? There's going to be Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and Thor, the 3rd Thor film. So 3 Marvel films coming up in the summer. Well, a few in the summer and then 1 in the fall. Alien Covenant comes out May 19th. This is Ridley Scott's Prometheus sequel, and that has Michael Fassbender in it. And I don't know how you guys feel about Prometheus, if you're looking forward to this or not.
I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah,
you enjoyed Prometheus?
I'm totally looking forward to it. Love Prometheus. I wish that Ridley Scott would have announced that there's 3 more movies coming out, because now Neil Blomkamp's official sequel to Aliens is looking thinner and thinner.
Oh. I guess I didn't know he was thinking about doing that. That could have been interesting.
Yeah, Neil Blomkamp. He's got if you check out his Instagram, Neil Blomkamp is the director of the District was it District 9, District 13, District 9, and he was working on the visual art and the script for the official sequel of Aliens, where Ripley, Newt, Colonel Hicks, they all survive, unlike their demise in Alien 3. Which disappointed a lot of the fans, but this is supposed to be like a fan, or actually supposed to be canon, but originally started as a fan kind of like a sequel, and well, hopefully we'll get to see Aliens, the sequel, Aliens Part 2, but for right now, Ridley Scott is releasing 3 more of these. And to go on your statement about Prometheus, I love Prometheus. I thought it was a good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Any movie of the Alien franchise is one of my favorite franchises. So, but yeah, definitely. Getting back to you, Ray.
Well, I think Prometheus went over the heads of a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it was a love letter to the fans, but it went over the heads of a lot of people. So Alien Covenant from Ridley Scott comes May 19th. Now, next come a couple of films that make horror fans kind of shudder, and not in a good way. June 9th is going to see the release of The Mummy with Tom Cruise. Part of the Universal Monster Universe. This reboot, the reboot takes place in current day. We've all seen the Tom Cruise trailer, and dear Lord Jesus, God help.
Yes, help us, please. Don't
now,
go see that movie.
Now, if that wasn't a kick to the nuts, next is World War Z 2.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There's a little dark period, fans. There's a little dark period horror fans. Just try to relax, chill, and deal with it. These movies will disappear quickly. Let's see. They'll come and go. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I make half this shit up. Yet another swing at Amityville coming, June 30th.
Oh, finally getting released.
I'm sorry, say again, Morgan?
I said it's finally getting released.
Yeah, I have a date of June 30th. Okay, boys and girls. So, boys and girls and children of all ages, wake the neighbors. This is stuff that you need to be writing down, because God knows we need another Amityville remake, people. I know. Some nights I wake up screaming because I can't get another friggin' Amityville fucking remake. I'm sorry. It's the way I feel. Forgive me. I'm sure the people who made the movie are lovely people. I'm sure they're nice folks, but fuck, man. How many? Another remake of the Amityville Horror. Now, this one really suffered numerous production delays and release date changes. So who knows if this June 60th date is firm, but still, so next, coming up in July, late July, finally, The Dark Tower. We have a date of July 28th. The movie adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. Matthew McConaughey, Idris Elba, they are confirmed as the leads. Annabella 2. Just when you thought it was safe to get that Barbie dream house, it's Annabella 2. August 11th, the prequel. This is going to be a prequel.
They made a sequel to Annabella?
Yeah, Anna. Well, yeah, but I'm glad you spoke up, because you look at the budgets for these movies. A film like Annabella and Annabella 2. This is low cost, high yield, as opposed to something like Rings coming out at a $33 million budget. Maron. I mean, they're going to have to really, I think they'll probably make their money back. It's not that much money in Hollywood terms. I think it's a lot of money for a horror film, but these Annabelle movies and these Insidious films are made for modest dollars, and they're effective horror films, and they do well. So you'll see. Annabelle 4, 5 wouldn't surprise me.
Annabelle goes to space.
I don't know how there's going to be a prequel, though.
I'm sorry, say again?
I don't understand how this is going to be a prequel, because in Annabelle, it shows like how the doll becomes like possessed or whatever. So like, I don't know how it's going to be a prequel, but okay.
Well, I have just but a one-sentence description, a prequel to Annabelle that explains the doll's dark origins. So there you go. There you have it.
But the doll wasn't
Ooh, the hairs stood up. They literally stood up. The hairs stood up. I'm terrified. September, come fall. Here we go, folks. Another Stephen King property. It comes out on September 8th, the remake of Stephen King's It, and it's going to be split into 2 parts. By the way, so we were only going to see part 1 on what is it? September 8th. Let's see, Flatliners, remake of Flatliners, as if we needed one. Let's see, 1990s film, September 29th. This stars Ellen Page. So this
Diego
is,
Luna.
I like her.
I'm sorry, say again?
Diego Luna. From
I like
Rogue
Ellen
One.
Page too.
Yes, correct. Now, on my list here, I show for October 13th, another Friday the 13th film.
Yeah,
Oddly enough.
supposedly.
That's what they
It's been
say.
pushed back so
Supposedly.
many times.
Yeah, well, there is a Friday the 13th in October, and it looks like they might be shooting for it. Insidious 4, Chapter 4, comes out October 20th. Let's see, here's a film called The God Particle. This is coming out on
Oh yeah.
October 27th. What do you think? What is this? This is what some people are...
The Cloverfield.
Correct. Some people are calling this the Cloverfield prequel. This takes place aboard a spaceship when a shocking discovery leads the team of astronauts fighting for their lives. And, you know, I love a good one. Boy, I love me a monster movie. You know, I adore monster movies. So that could be right up my alley. And then finally, what I have here for September, for the end of October, is Saw Legacy. The Predestination directors, Michael brothers, I believe, Michael and Peter Spierig. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing their names. I'm sure they're watching. They're going to helm the latest film in the Saw franchise. Tobin Bell is rumored. I cannot speak today. I'm so sorry, everybody. Tobin Bell is rumored to return as Jigsaw. I don't know how the fuck they're going to
Didn't
do
he die
that.
like 5 movies ago?
He's been, yeah. I guess, you know, flashbacks. You know, he was a busy fella. Had a lot of free time. You know, I mean, a lot of free time.
Say something, but he's muted.
Built all that shit. You
I
know?
just realized I just said the same thing you said.
And that's the list of horror releases for 2017. And I would like to think that, you know, the Horror Syndicate, you know, we're going to be on top of these movies as each one gets released along the way. So you guys, you stick with us throughout the year, because there's going to be plenty to talk about, not just classic horror and not just foreign horror, but stuff happening right here and right now. So thanks so much. That's the news. Back to you, Brian.
All right. Thank you very much, Rayzilla. I definitely appreciate a good news story, especially with a lot of movies that are coming out. Up next, Baron has his DOA reviews. Baron, take it away.
All right. So for those unfamiliar with the DOA reviews, people always say, "Oh, this is the worst horror movie." Sorry, you're wrong. I have the master list, and good God, there's a lot of crap out there. So I am going to sacrifice my eyes, my time, and my mind for these films, so you, the horror fans, are not subject to this crap. As you'll note, our first film that we did start off with was Axum, which has a 1.2 rating on the Internet Movie Database. It is the lowest rated film ever. You can't get any worse than the crap. All you have to do is watch the trailer and you go, "Oh God, we don't want to watch that." So then this past week, we released the review for Attack of the Jurassic Shark. Okay, the title is the most exciting part of this movie. I mean, if you want to watch two people splash water at each other while a prehistoric megalodon swims in the shadows of a lake, great. I don't know how that actually happens, but it did. The CGI work is pretty god-awful. That film got a 1.5, and again, after I finished it, I just wanted to, you know, put a sledgehammer to my own skull because it was so hideous. I thought the excitement of the pain would be more pleasurable. This week, the review is going to be Bird Epidemic 2, The Resurrection of Crack.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
There was a second one?
Yes, there was a
Unfortunately.
second one. And believe it or not, it's worse than the first one by 1/10 of a point.
Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I,
Go ahead.
I'm, there's a chance that that first one came through my office. There's a distinct possibility I may have had a whack or two at that project. Is that one from? Do you know offhand who the producer was in front of you? Real One Productions.
No, it wasn't. Producer name, I think his name is Wen or something like that. He believes that his films are the new franchise of horror history.
Okay.
He believes that we'll get a big studio like Paramount Pictures with $20 million to give to movies because they're so stellar.
Oh boy.
Folks, the bird effects in part 1 are going to be looking at stellar. We're talking World War Z kind of stellar here compared to the bird effects in part 2, which look like some sort of combination of birds with space invaders, and you are literally flying on the screen, shooting them out of the air, and they explode in the air. Not even speaking that we have cave men and women being resurrected out of the Labara tar pits. You got, I mean, just insanity. Oh, you're gonna love the parts where I talk about the jellyfish attacking somebody in the ocean, and then the digitized ambulance that appears and disappears. That is probably some classic kickboxing maneuvers that are also occurring for you fans out there of that. And for the firearms lovers of our show, yes, you get to watch firearms being shot over 200 times without any reloading occurring in your, Glock. And you know that can't happen.
Wow, I love that. I love an endless amount of ordnance, endless amount of ammunition. Love it.
Oh, yeah. It's a film that the director puts as a send-up for Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Oh, God, why? I'd rather watch Call. I'd rather watch the sequel to Birds they made. Why? But wait a minute. I have something special for you, Rayzoa.
Yes, sir.
Knowing that you like Amityville so much and that they're going to be released in Amityville on June 30th, upcoming in the reviews for this new column, I will be covering Amityville Playhouse, which came out in 2015, the Amityville Legacy that came out in 2016, Amityville Terror that came also out in 2016, and just released this month, Rayzo, just for you, is the Amityville Exorcism with a 1.5 rating.
Wow. I thought you were going to say the Amityville Circumcision, but
hey, that's my movie. I star in that movie.
That's yes.
Yeah.
Rod Steiger returns this time as a Moyle.
That's right.
And they perform a beautiful breast. It's
with his mouth.
Well, yeah, old school, So.
But yes, to say the
But
least,
we digress. I'm sorry, Baron. Go on.
this is a fun column. I get to take films that people always say. Everybody always says, "Oh, this is the worst movie ever." We say about all kinds of films. No, these are the worst movies ever. I have a list in front of me, folks. It's got over 860 films that don't even get above a 4 on the Internet Movie Database.
Wow.
And I'll be doing one a week until I decide that's enough. My brain has melted away and I can't handle anymore.
Baron,
the Baron segment.
We could have had you do a DOA review on the Resident Evil movies. I think they're below a 4.
No, they're not, Brian. We have some really good classic titles in this list. I mean, there's some stellar shit in this list. Shit that people will just go, I want you to tell me where a bomb is located. Just to have them watch this shit. They will talk in seconds. There we go. I can't take it. What the hell were they doing?
So this is the kind of movies we would play if we were torturing terrorists, right? Like a CIA torture method.
Yes, yeah. So
Chinese-
people were really into gorillas a lot. Maybe torture them too.
But folks, someone has to do it. This is a civil service, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
That the Baron is performing, because he is sacrificing, as he said so eloquently before. I'm having mealy mouth today. I really can't speak. He's sacrificing his brain, his body, his sanity, his sperm count to watch these films. And
Wait a minute. Sanity? I don't have any. I gave that up a long time ago for Lent. That's gone. Besides,
and I just hope that you kids out there.
You don't want a bunch of Baron crazies running around your local school districts. Guaranteed.
I hope you kids out there appreciate the work that the Baron is doing, because his segment's going to be brought to you by Xanax, man. Because he may not make it. He may not make it through this. But I digress.
He's truly taking one for the team.
Yes, he is.
I can tell people right now that technically I can make it through a whole year. Okay, 52 weeks, and we would still be with films that are at a 1.9 rating.
Wow.
There's that many.
Ouch. Well, I mean, look, when I did the job at Sci-Fi, for every movie I bought, I rejected 12, 13 easily.
You should get an Oscar now.
It just, that's just the law of averages.
A Pulitzer prize to Brazil out there for getting rid of crap off of Sci-Fi.
Well, some people would argue I did a shitty job of it.
Yeah. Maybe diarrhea job of it, but hey.
Nothing a little Imodium AD can't fix, right?
That's what you got. All right, so that's it for the thing for this week. You guys are going to love with how I come up with next week's film already.
We can't wait, Baron. All right, before we get into our next segment, which is the Resident Evil franchise, both video games and movies, we have an announcement from Jared that we need to make. Jared, take it away.
Yes, we do. We actually have a statement from our fearless president of the Horror Syndicate. Or, if you guys have been paying attention, he hasn't been with us the last couple of weeks, but he wanted to release a statement because he wanted to weigh his couple cents in on the franchise. Hey, friends of the Horror Syndicate. Sorry, I have been absent. I've always been a big fan of the Resident Evil game series. I remember playing the games on my 12-inch Megatron TV back in '96. Our main video game series finally announced. But upon the release of the first movie, I was kind of disappointed. At this point, they are what they are. It was to see some kind of reboot of the film series without the Alice character and keep it grounded, more like the game series. I would think Resident Evil would be a great idea for a Netflix series. My article, Is It Horror? On Resident Evil at thehorrorsyndicate.com. Thanks. Don't forget to follow me. _33 and Rage of Razor on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jared. That is our president and Fjord Razor with his input on the Resident Evil franchises, both movie and game. Now, I know in the beginning of the, before we began the show, you saw a little video side by side, Resident Evil 3 and pieces of Resident Evil Apocalypse. Basically, if you're trying to see any type of similarities in both the movies, it's about 1 minute and 30 seconds long. And you got that in the very beginning of the show. I don't know what's going on with the sound quality, but hey, things like this happen. We're bound to make mistakes. Anything can happen live. It's just the way it is. So we're going to get in.
It's live, baby.
Next week.
Exactly. So we're going to get into Resident Evil. With video game terror rising the bar in today's gaming, whether it's survival horror, customizing weapons, or fighting off the undead, or just sitting through spooky ghost stories, horror games are focusing on the player's experience. Now, with that being said, Resident Evil 7 is making its way, made its way to consoles. We were actually able to get a screening of Resident Evil 7, thanks to thank you by O'Maldi Gaming. You can follow him at twitch.com/OMaldiGaming. He was able to play a couple hours of Resident Evil 7. I know that there's been releases of Resident Evil 7 that have been available for download, but now the official game is out, and his review of it was a 9 out of 10. I asked him about how's it tie into the rest of the series. He gave me a brief synopsis of the and then the ending, of course, which I will not ruin because the game is fairly new. I would check it out. He recommends check it out. The game looks pretty fun. We're gonna get into Resident Evil 7 a little bit.
This is Brian. This was the little bit that we saw online live just the other night. Correct?
That is correct. Yes.
That's a little bit. Yeah, it looks awesome.
Yeah, and for PlayStation 4, if you have it for PlayStation 4, you can actually use the PlayStation VR, even though it's sold out right now. But if you have a PlayStation VR, you get to experience the full-on terror of being in Resident Evil 7. And that means you get to see everything, kind of like how VR has now made its way to cell phones. It's now made its way to console. It was on computer for a while, but now it's here on the PlayStation. It's the only one that's in the market right now. Xbox One, I have a feeling, will be on there further on. If you are a gamer,
so there's a VR version of this new Resident Evil game.
Yes.
With the headset and the zombies and the whole friggin' thing.
Put the headset on. We'll put the
Wow,
headpiece on. Yeah, Ray. I think you should try it out.
I haven't done it yet. I've never tried any sort of Oculus or anything like that. I've never done it before, but I can guarantee you that I'm trying that shit last. I'll do.
Yeah.
No fucking way, because
Might start with a walk in the park first.
Yeah. Let me take me to the Statue of Liberty. Take me to the Statue of Liberty. Take me to send me back in time. To Ben Franklin, stuff like that. Fighting zombies. Give me a little time to get acclimated before I can start taking on that sort of bullshit. Even like a roller coaster, I've seen people like fall off their friggin' chairs.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. They have children's games for VR that you can get used to first.
Nice.
Just solving puzzles and nothing really too scary coming out. Resident Evil 7 is definitely for the hardcore horror fans of the video game genre and movies. I would if you have a temperament to like having seizures, I wouldn't recommend playing the game on VR. But if you are taking a lot of say if you're on a lot of opiates that night, I would recommend going and taking Resident Evil 7 just to add on to the experience. Alright, so Capcom unleashes terror back in 1996 with its eerie Resident Evil. Had an eerie score, scary synthwave soundtrack, or synth score soundtrack, not synthwave, sorry, that was last week's episode. And god-awful voice acting. This was in 1996. Resident Evil brought on the major experience for horror survival. Now, there was other games that came out before, a lot of click and point.
Now, what platform was that in '96? What platform?
That was for the Sony PlayStation when it first came out.
Yeah, the original
PlayStation. Original PlayStation.
Original PlayStation. The one that if you put if your music CDs in, it could play like the music CDs for you on there. That was the only other feature. Then PlayStation 2, where we were able to add DVDs.
Gotcha.
And but Sony PlayStation, that was the first one of the one of the first survival games to come out on PlayStation, and it had hilarious voice acting. You were able to play as two characters, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, who were key roles to the rest of the series. That being said, the voice acting wasn't all there. They used live action actors. In USA, the intro was cut down with all of its gore because it had to aim towards children, of course. But in Japan, you were able to get the full-on colorized, uncut version, which we played on our Horror Syndicate Facebook page today, which you can find. A couple videos are playing there live, such as the unedited intro for Resident Evil, which you guys need to check out. It's awesomely hilarious. It's got great practical effects, and it's funny. That being said, we were coming on to a new sequel, Resident Evil 2, but before that there was a Resident Evil 1.5 which came out, which was scrapped. They kept Leon Kennedy, who is an ongoing character of the series as well, but as they were getting ready for Resident Evil 2, they hired, you guessed it, George Romero. to direct a commercial for them in Japan, and that commercial starred Brad Renfro as Leon Kennedy, and
How
you
I
guys,
remember hearing about this.
yeah, and you guys may know Brad Renfro is no longer with us. He was a kid when he first did it, and it was like a 30-second trailer. With that being said, George Romero was hired by Capcom to write the script for Resident Evil the movie. And I don't know if you guys have heard about Resident Evil the movie. Especially George Romero's production of it. There were a couple books that came out written by S.D. Perry, who actually was able to cover all the video games up until Resident Evil 4 with Leon Kennedy. But all the stories were in great detail. She followed everything to the T in the video games, not like you have with the movies, of course, but George Romero was hired to direct and write and direct the movie Resident Evil, where he changed a couple things around, but the majority of the script was based on the video game. Chris Redfield was Native American though, and his Jill Valentine was his love interest, and they fired George Romero because they didn't like the script, and basically their dispute on it was no one wants to see a movie about puzzles. So, and then, years later we get Saw. So, who would have thunk it?
I've never heard that. That's
Not the first time Romero's run into problems with his scripts. And producers and studios not liking the written page, and he's been down this path before.
It was pretty, successful for a lower budget film with puzzles. That was a good movie.
Cube, yeah.
It's kind of
had babies too. They do like Cube 2 and Cube 3 and shit like that.
Yeah. All of them were awful except the first Cube. So, but yeah. So George Romero got canned. Then they brought in Paul W.S. Anderson, not to be confused with Paul Thomas Anderson or Wes Anderson. It was Paul W.S. Anderson who directed Mortal Kombat.
Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, but please,
Ian Anderson from Tonight's episode is brought to you by Philadelphia's own Jack's Hard Cider, and then followed by that is Manny Young PBJ Crunch. I am definitely looking forward to drinking that next. But Resident Evil 2 was the ultimate survival horror game that people still talk about to this day. They want a remastered version of it. There's actually a company on the side who independently funded using Unreal Engine to make a Resident Evil 2 remaster where they enhance the graphics, and you can play both classic style and you can also play over the shoulder like Resident Evil 4 had to offer. And I believe Resident Evil 4 brought on gamers like yourself, Rayzilla. It actually involved the rest of the world because the game controls were slightly easier and it was more action packed.
Are you saying that the simplicity because I was so deficient in my abilities, it was the simplicity of the controller that brought me to the game? Is this what you're?
Well, I could be using you as a statistic.
Send your cards and letters to Brian Enright.
I am totally using you as a statistic because you never played the other Resident Evil games, and you played 4, which was what happened with the rest of the world. They jumped in on Resident Evil 4 bandwagon. I'm not saying anything bad about it. Resident Evil 4 was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a reimagination to the entry of Resident Evil. Well,
it was a big gateway for me because I still have my NES. I tell you guys, I still have my NES. I still have my Sega, my Sonic the Hedgehog and all of that. And I gamed for a while. I was in there in the early days of it, and then I drifted away for a little while. I became a parent and I raised a couple of girls, and as my daughters got older, we picked up a GameCube, and and I started playing. I started watching and getting involved. She was playing very simple children's games, and I got involved with Madden, and then I picked up Resident Evil 4 because I had heard it had gotten this tremendous review on IGN.
Mm-hmm.
Called it one of the best games ever made, this and that, and and it really just changed my perception of gaming, because the way that, you know, I had grown up with gaming, it was about scoring points. You know, it was a scrolling screen. You know, you ran to the right, and Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog and all of the other, you know, some of the games were even more static than that. And this was a completely different experience for me. So, you know, the first few times that I played it, you know, I really didn't know what the hell I was doing. I would just walk into the middle of the village. You know, I would just walk right the fuck right through the gate, the opening of the, you know, the very opening of Resident Evil 4. I think you killed the one guy in the house, and then you move down the path to the village, and I would just walk balls out straight down the into the village, shoot as many zombies as I could until they friggin' ate me. You know, and I would just repeat this over and over and over again, and then slowly it began to dawn on me, you know, there's got to be more to this than just, you know, standing still and trying to shoot things. And so I go through the, you know, I'm approaching the village again, and this time I notice a path to the left, and suddenly I take the path to the left, and I'm behind the buildings. There's a ladder leading up to one of the roofs of the buildings, and I take the ladder up to the building, and now I'm above everything, and I could pick people off. And suddenly I realized that I was developing a sniper mentality, that suddenly I'm looking for choke points, and you know, it just completely obliterated my perception of gaming. Honestly, honest to God, because from there I took off and I started playing, you know, God of War and you know, other RPGs and first person shooters, my Call of Duty. I love Call of Duty. So it really, for me, was absolutely a gateway introduction back into gaming. And you know, what blew my mind about it too was it was scary as fuck. I mean, there's no music. You know, when you're out in the woods, you're out in the woods. All you hear is the fucking wind. It's scary. I got a 50-inch plasma. It was scary as fuck. I mean, it truly was an effective horror game. So I have very fond memories of Resident Evil 4, and
Yeah, no,
it's a big favorite of mine. I loved it. I played it over and over.
Yeah, Resident Evil 4 definitely,
made my way through it several
definitely
times.
brought in the fans to the franchise, and it brought in new players as well. For old school gamers like me, I definitely loved the second Resident Evil because it was the first time that you had to play as on 2 discs, and there were 2 different types of scenarios. You were able to get the first ending on the first scenario for each character, but there was a second scenario that you had to unlock, which was a continuation ending of the original ending that you got, which was explained a little bit more, and there was more cutscenes. Basically, what happens is Leon and Claire get separated in a car accident. Claire Redfield is the sister of the main character from the first one. Leon Kennedy's a cop that is a rookie on his first night of the job. And and then when they split up after the car accident, you can play as both their sides, vice versa, and it's a lot of fun. That was the first time we got to experience that on a video game console. One of my favorite games of all time of the Resident Evil franchise is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which was originally supposed to be called Resident Evil Nemesis. It wasn't supposed to be the third one. In fact, Code Veronica, which later came out, was supposed to be the third one. But they were under pressure by the studios, they're under pressure by the video game company, so they made they called it Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and
It was.
go ahead.
I just can't forget that Nemesis walking around. Stars.
And yeah, and he just followed you, and then Resident Evil 3 was the first time where you could have a different ending. You were actually able to choose different. Actually, no, the first one you could have different endings, but this one you actually got to choose the way that you played the game. It would offer you different options to choose when you were fighting Nemesis. To be honest, in my opinion, it was the easiest of the Resident Evil turn and shoot games that were offered up until Code Veronica and Outbreak. It was just so easy because you actually dodge the enemies and move away from them, and you can pick up weapon items But if you played it on hard mode, you actually got to fight Nemesis, which was a lot harder. So you had to be really quick with the dodge button, and then pick up customizable parts for your weapons and use those. So Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was also the first time you got to play Mercenaries mode. It's a little bit different than what Resident Evil 4 had to offer Mercenaries mode. You got to play as 3 different mercenaries that were from the in-game, and you had to take out so many enemies at a time limit and save the survivors. Whereas Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries mode, you got to fight the enemies at a time limit, but you had to stay there for as long as you could. What's that?
Now was that Nemesis with the big meat tenderizer? Is that him with the big fucking thing that beat you over the head? The big axe meat. It looks like a meat tenderizer. It looks like he's gonna, make
no. You're thinking.
Nemesis is bald.
Yeah, you're thinking Resident Evil 4 is the one with that. And then they brought him into the movies. I feel like
That's
the
right,
movies. I feel like the movies, they played a little bit of the video game after the first movie came out, and there was such a high demand for Resident Evil video game characters and for it to be more like the video game. I feel like Paul W.S. Anderson and his team got together, played the first 5 minutes of video game, said we're going to keep that scene in the movie and make up our own fucking story. And but we'll get back. We'll get into that soon. Traveling along, there was some off-canon games. Such as a Survivor Series, which was a huge issue after 9/11, because it was supposed to be like House of the Dead, where you were able to walk around and have a remote control gun, kind of like Duck Hunt. You know that video game, Ray.
What's that? What was the name of that, Brian? Say
it
again.
It's called Duck Hunt. If you use a magnifying glass, you can shoot all the ducks in one hit.
That kind of language, Brian, really isn't acceptable on. They just had a women's march. What's the matter with you? Send your cards and letters to Brian and Wright, care of the Horror Syndicate, at the Horror Jew.
So, but
I remember the game. Yes.
So Survivor Series, you were able to have a gun, and then after 9/11, of course, they cut it. You no longer have a gun, and it made the game unplayable. And it got so many bad reviews, and then they made a second one, which was only released in Japan, and then they made a Dead Aim, which is for the PlayStation 2, which is not considered canon at all. And then the other games that they made was Outbreak Files 1 and 2, which went back to the old school playing of Resident Evil with the turn and shoot, and you were able to play different scenarios. And it was the first game you could play online, and a lot of hardcore Resident Evil gamers, such as myself, were able to play online, and we enjoyed it because a lot of online games featured headsets and talking to other players in game. Resident Evil didn't allow that. You were able to talk to each other in a AOL type chat room right before the game played, and you had to use the right analog stick to communicate, and there were in-game communication options that you were able to use with the right analog stick. And then, of course, we got Resident Evil 4. Which ended up being everyone's favorite and brought so many people into the franchise, and it was also a promise to old school Resident Evil gamers, and it was just a lot of fun. Going into a little trivia here, Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be a completely different story. Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be a ghost story. Leon Kennedy was supposed to be infected with the T virus, and he was seeing things because he was turning. Yeah, it was supposed to be completely different. You can find the video game demos online. It is more of a ghost story than it is a zombie shooter.
Did they ever end up using that material, going back and resurrecting it, so to speak?
No, you can only, unfortunately, just like 1.5, which was only available for a Resident Evil 2 pre-order demo when it came back in 1997, you can only find that online. So that's unfortunate, but they have a lot of great stuff on YouTube that feature a lot of Resident Evil games that you couldn't play, such as one for the Game Boy. And in fact, kind of going into it, I know we talked about Duck Hunt earlier. Resident Evil was originally supposed to be released for the NES, and they have footage of it for the NES on YouTube. You can go find that out. And it looked bad, of course. It looked terrible, and it looked unplayable, but, of course, you have you have those
It
playing.
wasn't like E.T. or you know.
Oh God, no. It wasn't like a guy was chasing you with a hat and then you fell into a pit.
Shit.
Yeah, you couldn't get out of the pit, and then it got buried in the
I didn't
desert
think the
somewhere.
franchise went that far back.
I think it could have gotten any worse than Nightmare on Elm Street, the NES game.
Yeah, no,
I had the Friday the 13th game. I had the Friday the 13th NES game, and I couldn't beat Jason for shit. Couldn't beat him for
That
shit.
game was hard.
Yeah. That game was damn hard.
That-
And back in the day, you couldn't save your shit either.
no, you
But
couldn't.
luckily
You
now,
were fucked. When you died, you died. You were fucked. You had to start over.
You and your friends are dead. Game over.
can't
Right.
can't save your game unless it's Zelda.
So, but yes, Resident Evil is supposed to be originally released for the NES. Now we have games such as Resident Evil 6, which are now copying off the success of the movies, which we will get into after the games. The movies, Resident Evil movies, were action packed. The first one was as close to survival horror to the video games than the rest of the series in the franchise, because then it started getting a little crazy with like the jumping around, shooting zombies, like just fighting enemies, and it didn't seem like the creators of the Resident Evil movies got the grasp of the video games. They just kind of threw all this content into each other and said, "Oh, this is how we think this should work," and people liked it. A lot of people who didn't play the video games because the video games were just too fucking hard couldn't get into the video games, and they got into the movies. Not myself though. You can find my review on thehorrorsyndicate.com, The Rise and Fall of Resident Evil. I have the part 1 up. Part 2 will be shortly after I play Resident Evil 7, just because I want to kind of get the feel of everything, and of course with Resident Evil, the final chapter, starring Corey Feldman, coming out on Friday, as well. I want to wait for that to be over.
Corey Feldman?
That was a joke. Final chapter joke.
Oh. You got me there for a minute. I was just gonna say, what the natural fuck is he doing in that movie?
So,
never mind.
So Resident Evil 5 came out. Resident Evil 5 was Chris Redfield, and of course the villain from the first video games, Albert Wesker. They finally face off, and it starts getting a little ridiculous because the main character breaks through a boulder with one punch. Where in the first Resident Evil, if a boulder landed on top of you, you fucking died, and if you didn't save your game, you had to start all over it. Resident Evil 6 was a little more playable and enjoyable than 5, in my opinion. You got to play as different characters, and it was co-op, just like Resident Evil 5. But you could play, to multiple people, and all their stories tie up in the end. So now that was,
guys are dicks.
yeah, that was a complete
Can
rundown.
I just talk about the co-op for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I talk about the co-op for a second?
Yes, sir.
Evil 5 months after the release. It was a bargain buy, and 6 had already came out, and I was playing it, and I was like, okay, I can co-op. Somebody joined me.
Mm-hmm.
They just took everything, like any of the stuff that I didn't know where it was, all the hidden items and stuff. They just took it. Bad experiences with co-op, but I didn't play it right away. So this guy's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna take all this stuff from him," and I had literally 6 bullets the whole level.
Well, you should have tried. You should have tried playing Resident Evil Outbreak. You definitely should have tried playing Resident Evil Outbreak, because you're a babe in the woods in that game. If you just started getting on there, if you didn't know where all the items were, people just ran in front of you. And the fucked up thing about Resident Evil Outbreak is, I think it was like 5 months later in the game, they allowed friendly fire, so you could like try to get an item, and then you have some asshole start pushing you out of the way or punching you, or everyone had a special ability. The one guy's special ability was to play dead, which was hilarious. But
I suck at co-op. I suck at it. I get yelled at. It's great. I like it when they do. God damn it, Rayzilla! Because I have like no aim whatsoever. I do Call of Duty, but I have shitty aim. So I need like grenade launchers, nuclear weapons. It's the only way I'm gonna hit something,
Oh, you noob!
and on and I
noob.
get yelled at, but I enjoy it. I like this. God damn it, Rayzilla, you suck! They scream at me. Some 12-year-old yelling at me.
Yeah, they're all like threatening to
Fantastic.
have sex with your mom. I'm just like, all right, go
It's
ahead,
fantastic.
go have sex with my mom, you piece of shit.
Oh, I like getting yelled at. It's great.
And you know what? It's funny you said that because they released the Umbrella Chronicles. Not Umbrella Chronicles.
I've seen that.
They made
I've
like
seen
Operation
Umbrella Chronicles.
Umbrella or something like that, and Umbrella Corps is what they made, and that game was
Is that for
ass.
the PS3?
PS4
sorry?
and Xbox One. The game is ass. Umbrella Chronicles. Let me go back. Umbrella Chronicles was fun. That was your Wii shooter. And it relived all the Resident Evil video games, but with enhanced graphics. Then they made Operation Raccoon City, which was It was co-op again. And then they made a Resident Evil Umbrella Corps, which was awful. It's god awful. It looks like garbage, but it kind of looks like they went the Gears of War approach, which didn't work out for them because it's all over the place. Ray, I think you need to check out that Umbrella Corps and and see what a shitty game looks like. Absolutely.
Oh, really?
It tried to be.
I've moved. I mean, now I play Batman and Arkham City and all that shit. I'm well into it now, but no, I haven't really seen anything. Why do you think that they do? Why release such a shitty product? I mean, why is it noticeably?
It's
of
noticeably
lower
bad.
quality?
Yeah, it's one of those things where Capcom has so much money and they say, well, we got to release something Resident Evil. We have to release something Resident Evil because Resident Evil
Keep the franchise going.
Yeah, and anything Resident Evil is going to be money making. People love the series. And I think the reason that a lot of people love the series so much is because of Resident Evil 1 through 4. And like the later games kind of just turned everyone off. But hopefully with Resident Evil 7, people start getting that old school fear of Resident Evil back.
Well, it certainly looked like old school Resident Evil from the clips that I was watching last night. So that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked
And that's
fun.
for PS4.
Yes. PS4, you can do the option of VR. Xbox One does not have it yet. But VR is kind of hard to find right now. It retails for $399.99. But as of now, it's sold out everywhere. And you can get on eBay for $1,500 if you wanted to. It's up to you, Ray.
The hell with my kids' braces. I might as well.
Holy fuck balls.
Yeah, I know. That's
Let me think. Mortgage payment, or
Mm-hmm.
screw the mortgage payment. Get yourself a VR.
And then you can just get a house in the VR, get a
Yeah.
get a
You can
VR
live in
house.
your house in the VR world.
Yeah, there you go.
So, so I think we covered mostly, if not all, the Resident Evil video game titles. If we missed anything, please comment below and have a discussion with us because we are always listening and watching on our comment
hear
section
from
on
you.
Facebook. We would love to hear from you.
Des Moines, you're on the line.
With that being said, this is something that's a little bit out of my element, but I talked a lot about the video games, and you guys were so grateful to join me with that with that discussion. Now I guess tables have turned. Where you guys know more about this than I do because I stopped after the third one, but we have the Resident Evil movies starring Mia Jovovich and it was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
People.
And yes,
Michelle Rodriguez.
Michelle Rodriguez. Let's talk about it. Who wants to take it? I need a drink.
I thought it was a really good movie. When I saw that it was set in a mansion, first game, I started getting really excited. But then it starts diving down into where they go underground, this secret military base underneath the mansion, and they completely make it something completely different. Granted, it's very different, but it was still very effective in terms of being a horror film. The first one, in my opinion. They didn't know what they were up against. Michelle Rodriguez was actually really good in that movie, and I think she ended up coming back in the franchise later, but that's later on. I gave it a thumbs up.
Well, I also saw it when it came out, and I had no point of reference with the franchise, with the property, I should say, with the Resident Evil property. So I really saw it. I just saw it as a regular moviegoer, and I also enjoyed it. For the reasons that Jared states, the first one kind of made that left turn for me once they start going into the hive, and we go into the facility, and it's ultra modern with the Red Queen and all of this stuff. It was for me, it was refreshing. It was a hybrid. It was a mixture of science fiction and horror. I never really looked at it as a horror property in of itself. It was for me, it was a more blend of genres. Also, too, there was a fair amount of ass kicking, which I enjoy. I don't know about you guys, but I like a good old fashioned behind the woodshed ass kicking, and there was plenty of that. So I kind of dug the first movie, and yet I was aware of the backlash because there was some negative comments about the film not being faithful to the property, and I was not familiar with the property when I saw the movie. So I thought Mila Jovovich was wonderful, as was Michelle Rodriguez, and I liked also too. This is CG wasn't really sort of in its CG was still in its early stages. It's not used as much really in the first three films. When you think about it, there's really not that much CG. There is some, but nothing to the extent of, I'm sure, what we're going to see opening this weekend. It's going to be I'm sure it's going to be CG out the yin yang, but that's just a sign of modern production. But the original film I enjoyed, and I wasn't quite people bitched about the dogs. People bitched about. I remember there being some animosity, and maybe perhaps Brian, you could shed some light on it. Why there's that animosity between when the film came out? Was it because it wasn't exactly faithful to the source material?
No, it wasn't. It had no source material from the video games. It seemed as if the like I mentioned earlier, it seemed like the crew of writers got together and watched about the first 5 minutes of the video game and said, "Oh, we're gonna keep that." Or it was like word of mouth of like, "Oh, Resident Evil took place in a mansion. Well, we can make the movie take place in a mansion." The first game was, the first game could have wrote itself. A lot of video games nowadays, certain issues with video game movies, like Max Payne. Max Payne, when that came out in the movie theaters with Mark Wahlberg, it was a travesty because the video game wrote itself. The video games could write itself, and there was people, even George Romero, who did a little bit of background digging and had someone play the video games for him and tell him. And no, not only tell him, but play the video games in front of George Romero, where Paul W.S. Anderson and friends didn't do that. They just they probably asked someone in the headquarters from Capcom what's going on, and then Sony bought the rights for it, and then they just put this pile of mush together. And for someone that was a dedicated video game fan, because it was really a generation, my generation of video gamers that got into the survival horror for PlayStation, and we grew up with Resident Evil, and we were fucking excited to see Resident Evil on the big screen. And
Right.
it didn't deliver. It was this action-packed. There's one point where Mia Jovovich runs up a wall and kicks the zombie dog, the Cerberus, in the face, and then she fights a licker at the end, which she doesn't fight the licker. It's in the first Resident Evil. Resident Evil, it's not. The licker isn't introduced until the second video game after the outbreak in Raccoon City, and
So they kind of mushed the first two games into the first film.
Yeah.
Or at least it sounds well. And we talk about this on often here on the Syndicate when you're doing anything previous, if it's an adaptation of something, whether it's an adaptation of a novel, whether it's an adaptation of a video game, there is a level of expectation on part of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You call something Resident Evil, and the audience that is familiar with that property, suddenly there is a level of expectation that needs to be met. And it sounds to me like the first film was really Resident Evil in name only.
That's it.
Perhaps a dog here, a liquor there, the zombies, the Umbrella Corporation, but really that they kind of went for something different from the games.
Yeah.
Do you think that they've the graveyards are littered with poor video game film adaptations of video games.
Yeah, definitely.
So to their credit, they did something that was successful.
Mm-hmm.
So you can debate the point that maybe it was a good idea not to remain so faithful to the source material, because at the end of the day, they yielded a success. They produced a successful film. And we've seen over and over and over again. I don't know, was the Assassin's Creed movie any good? That came out. That seemed to come and go pretty damn fast.
I heard that.
Say again,
You
Morgan.
heard that sucked.
I heard that it was sucked.
Well, here's the problem with
they come and go.
Here's
so
the problem with
fast,
Hollywood, Ray. Hollywood doesn't
Well, yeah,
care about story. They don't care about original story from the video games that wrote themselves. They care about making a quick buck, taking these elements from video games, not knowing what the what's going on in the stories, and they fish it out. And we had this conversation before,
but
where
we
if
got
there's
a lot of mileage out of Resident Evil.
Yeah, and if a franchise is doing, and if a franchise is
this,
doing successful, they're going to keep making sequels to that, because that's how business is.
This thing had 6 babies.
Yeah.
Resident Evil. So you're gonna have you got a few executives sitting around the table saying to themselves, maybe we were right. To monkey with it, because you don't see video game properties like this. I can't think of one.
Yeah.
I can't think of one that's had this long a run.
Well,
Really?
You know what? Silent Hill, the very first Silent Hill movie was great. We knew going into it that there was more Resident Evil video game fans than there were Silent Hill video game fans. That anything that resembled Silent Hill the movie or the video game would just be on that. And the first Silent Hill movie was very good because it was based off of the video game, except they changed the main character, and they made it the wife of the husband, who had a different name in the movie. Then they made Silent Hill 2 Revelations in 3D, and they took the Resident Evil approach where they turn it into an action movie, and it bombed. And it's just, they took the Resident Evil approach, but Silent Hill could have been a good thing.
Well, I think Silent Hill is definitely has, both feet firmly planted in the horror genre, where Resident Evil, these are action films, and unfortunately for them, because really the first one is enjoyable, but once you want to, sadly, flaws reveal themselves when you get into the second film, you get into the third film, you get later on into the franchise. The movies get a little dull. Going on to the second movie. What was it? Is it Extinction? No.
Oh, Apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Apocalypse. Forgive me, horror fans. Forgive me. Please don't write. Boy, that movie takes a while to get going. I really remember just feeling like, let's, come on, let's get on with it. We've had the original, we had the first film. Let's step things up. Let's get things going. And it takes a little while for the action to pick up for me.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I just found it odd. For me, once the origin story has been told, and you get all of that information, all of that expedition out of the way, you have a real opportunity to tell an action-packed story. You know, everybody knows the origins. We all saw the first movie. Now you can just drop your characters into a scenario, drop them into a plot, and really get going. And they didn't do it with Resident Evil 2. I was greatly disappointed. What about you, Jared?
I actually just rewatched it last night, and
Ooh.
they pretty much rehashed everything that happened in the first movie in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
how much time are we talking between films?
2 years. I think it was 04.
Fuck, and they had to spend all that time. And they spent easily the first 20 minutes as a recap.
Yeah, and in the timeline of the movie, number 2 picks up right after number 1 left off in the timeline. But
now, the thing that drove me so crazy about Apocalypse, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Resident Evil Apocalypse, I had so high hopes for, because a majority of the beginning of the movie was Resident Evil 3. It was, the outbreak from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, where the cops are coming in, and STARS members are dropped from the helicopter, and we knew Nemesis was going to be in it, and Jill Valentine was running around the streets, and we had Carlos, who ended up being Alice's fucking love whatever, and then we had Nikolai, who was played by Scott Farkas, the guy who played Scott Farkas, and in the video game, Nikolai turned on Carlos and Jill Valentine.
Oh my gosh,
he turned on them,
funny.
You have to kill him at the end of Resident Evil 3. In the movie though, the Nikolai was killed off by a dog. He wasn't an enemy. But the thing that drove me nuts is that they had that pivotal scene from Resident Evil Nemesis where the cops are coming in and the STARS members are coming in and then people are throwing grenades and they're getting eaten. And it's almost like you're watching the first 5 minutes of Resident Evil 3, and then you go back into that fucking story about Alice and her crazy ninja jumping skills, and fucking Nemesis is a turd, and he's not even badass, where like in the video game he follows you around and fucking choke slams you and takes like a tentacle dick and shoves it through Brad's face, and you get this fucking movie, and it's just bullshit after bullshit, and I just, at the end of the movie, I'm just like, what the fuck? But I'm glad that I'm glad that Thomas Jane's Punisher came out that year, because I would have been so pissed off that summer if Resident Evil Apocalypse was the only movie, and that ruined the rest of the franchise for me. I thought Extinction was going to be good. No, Extinction was bullshit. It was fucking crap, and then I didn't even care about the rest of the fucking movies, and I'm so glad that they're finally finishing it. Go ahead, Jared. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, wait a minute. Whoa. Too much information here. This was too enjoyable. Now, please rewind. What does the Thomas Jane Punisher?
Yes.
There was just a little. How does this? Did this somehow?
That must have
It came out the same summer. It came out that same year, probably the same weekend. And I snuck in with my friends and we caught a double bill, where we pay for one movie and see the other movie free. Thank God I paid for The Punisher, because we walked in and saw Resident Evil Apocalypse. And hopefully I'll never see that again.
One, right? Travolta was in that?
Yeah, Travolta was in it, and he was grease lightning it up, and he threw his wife off a fucking highway to a railroad track and then bullshit. But yeah, I will give.
I'm trying to get into the mind of Brian Enright here.
Okay.
For a minute. Because so thank sweet Lord baby Jesus that movie came out. Because at least there was something worse than Resident Evil? Is that what it is?
No. Thomas Jane's Punisher was excellent.
It salvaged his summer.
It saved my life. Because Resident Evil Alpaca.
I thought that was. I didn't care for that Punisher at all.
It saved his 2004 apparently.
It was a great movie. Thank God that I saw it. Okay. But Capcom tried to make a difference. Capcom released 2 movies. One's called Degeneration, and the other one's called, I don't fucking know. But it's like a CGI animated version of Resident Evil following Claire and Leon, and it has like side stories and whoop-de-doo, and it's definitely more canon.
Degeneration, I think.
Degeneration and I forget
Degeneration.
that I know that one. Degeneration.
Regeneration, I think.
Degeneration.
Yeah.
Like Degeneration X without the X. Degeneration. And I don't know the second movie. But no, and
But then there's the third one.
there's the third one.
Did you see the third one?
The third one. Well, third one what? There's just another CGI Resident Evil?
Oh no! I thought you meant the movie. What? There was an animated Resident
Yeah,
Evil?
yeah.
There was a couple of animated ones. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that part correctly. Now,
That's okay.
Where can I find
yeah.
these?
you can
Or
find
are
those.
they worth watching?
Yeah. If you're a fan of the video games, I would check them out. Especially if you're a fan of 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, they more focus around the stories, like side stories of 4, 5, and 6. So they're not bad. But you know, we get into these Paul W.S. Anderson movies. The only reason the guy fucking got hired to make these fucking movies was because of the success of Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat wasn't even that great of a movie. It was a PG-13. I've seen fights in a fucking middle school cafeteria bloodier than the Mortal Kombat movie. I'll tell you what, Street Fighter was a godsend. I love that movie with Van Damme and his fucking terrible American accent. It's movie moments like that really dig into your heart and rip it out and show you what your insides look like. I loved Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme and the late Raul Julia, who played Bison in his finest role since Kiss of a Spider-Woman.
Bison's ass so hard.
Which is the best quote of the movie when he's like, "I'm going to God River."
So hard.
And you know what? Street Fighter didn't even have a fucking storyline. But the movie made the most of it. Same thing with Mortal Kombat, and made the most of it. Whatever. I just wish that Mortal Kombat would have been bloodier. But hey, so back on track. We hired Paul W.S. Anderson.
I met Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah. Did he do a
Yes,
split
I
in
met
front
him.
of you?
No, but you know what? He was the nicest person. He was really very, very, very nice. I met him at the American Film Market. Now he had done, oh fellas, help me. What's the name of the film? It was kind of a science fiction-y film. He played a
Time Cop?
Did Ringo Lamb direct a movie?
Did you say Time Cop? I love Time Cop.
With a began with an R, like. Oh God!
Replicant?
Maybe someone out there knows the film that I'm talking about.
Replicant was another one of his.
Replicant. That was the movie I saw. I had been.
Okay.
I was in Santa Monica attending the American Film Market, and the movie had played there, and he was there in
Done a
attendance.
couple of his things. He also did Maximum Risk. Oh.
Oh,
Sorry.
If we're gonna go off on Jean-Claude Van Damme real quick, my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie is definitely Sudden Death. There is no better movie about the Pittsburgh Penguins than Sudden Death, because Jean-Claude Van Damme actually dresses up as the goalie and plays hockey for the Pittsburgh Penguins while looking for the terrorists who kidnapped his son. And there's even a scene where he fights the Pittsburgh Penguin, who is a terrorist, and fucking kills his ass. Her ass.
Kick's even a good one.
Yeah. Sudden Death.
Does he check someone into the boards? I mean, is there?
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, no, Jean-Claude, Time Cop is like my #1 dream job. I would love for there to be like a job to be a time cop. I would go back in time and do so many things. I would.
Would you go back and arrest Paul W.S. Anderson?
Yeah. Yes, I would. I
He
would.
would go back and save Harambe, I think.
Yeah. Well, that would be the first thing I do is go back in
That goes
time and
without
save
saying,
Harambe.
Brian.
Yeah, never mind. Fuck the Prime Directive. He would just go right there.
Fuck that Prime Directive. I go back in time, save Harambe, and save Resident Evil series. But going back, what Ray Merrick was saying, I think that Resident Evil, to tell the full story of Resident Evil, it should be a Netflix series. Why not? Why not just revamp the series on Netflix and
Are you listening,
follow,
Netflix?
Yeah, and follow the video games because it would be perfect.
You guys kicked ass with Daredevil. I mean, they could totally kill it if they did it right.
Yeah, and they can go back in time to Raccoon City. Everyone else goes back in time to Raccoon City. Everyone's talking about because Raccoon City was the playground for Resident Evil, and that's what made Resident Evil. And then you have the fucking Paul W.S. Anderson movies where he's just people like these movies, and I gotta stop bad mouthing because I'm on my 5th beer. But Resident Evil movies.
Well, I don't think that you're alone in your feelings, because sadly, you look at like the 3rd film, Extinction, and it just the dialogue gets a little more pedestrian. For action films, when the action stops, boy does the action stop. In these movies.
Don't watch these movies if you're expecting great acting.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that had they had put enough effort into the narrative that they put into the fight sequences, because there are still wonderful fight sequences. They would have had something, but look, again, who am I to say? Because they went on to do number 4, number 5, number 6. So obviously Extinction did well at the box office. I think that the crow sequences are fascinating to look at. I think that they're well done. The opening of the film is a little intriguing, where we get to see that they're cloning Alice over and over and over again, which I thought was a rather nifty way to open the movie, particularly having her back in the mansion. But shortly after that, we break off onto the other storylines, and the movie just gets bogged down.
Yeah, the series is a giant wet fart. Just say it, Ray.
Yeah, it's just bad dialogue. But it's here's the good guy, here's the bad guy. Watch them chase each other for 90 minutes. It's not even that enjoyable, It really borders on tedium. When they're hot, they're hot. Now, number 4, I saw, but I didn't see it recently, and I really I recall it being rather forgettable. Number 4. What was number 4 called again? I have my notes here.
Afterlife.
Afterlife, correct. Now that one was the one in 3D. I think it took place in Japan. Was it? Is that the one that took place in Japan?
I have no idea.
That would be Retribution, I believe. The 5th one.
Retribution? I can't. I'm going through my notes at the moment, because really I kind of lose. I dropped off from it. No. Hold on. Afterlife 2010 is set in Japan.
Okay.
So there. Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me.
So there. And
I let me just stop you. I can't believe we're actually discussing the storylines and where these movies are taking place. I can't believe it. I'm sorry. Does
it hurt?
It hurts.
Does it hurt? Is it
hurts
painful?
so bad. I can't even fathom talking about these movies.
In, man.
Like, even describing these movies in a positive way.
We're just making you aware of what you've missed out.
Oh, I didn't miss anything. I did not miss a goddamn thing.
Actually, he's right. Jared, my friend, he's absolutely correct, because you really aren't missing anything at this point. Let's hope that this last installment does. I mean, for the most part, these movies do get theatrical releases, and this is a business. So they're not going to keep, if just like with anything, when I was in television, if people stop watching a show, it doesn't come back.
Yeah.
The tail doesn't wag the dog. Why did this show, people would write letters. Why did you cancel? People would write letters to my department. Why did you cancel Farscape? Well, we canceled it because you stopped watching it. It's that simple. If people go to a rock concert and they don't like the band, they don't go back. it couldn't be plainer. I mean, that's what happens
Mhm.
when a show gets canceled. It's because you didn't watch it,
Yeah.
and you know, I mean, sometimes there are other reasons. There are production problems, you know, legal issues. People don't get along, whatever. Projects come, projects go. But for the most part, that's, you know, that's the hard and fast truth of it.
Yeah.
So these movies continued to be successful. Somebody saw them. I see in the research that I did before, prior to the show, um, the international success of
Yeah.
these films is really what I think keeps them alive.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going for them. American audiences starting to figure out that these movies are well overdue. But the you know, all over the world, they eat this shit right up.
Now,
Unfortunately.
and I believe the budget for #7 really isn't too steep either.
No, well, that's CGI for you. I mean, that's Hollywood, baby.
You know, I mean, well, you know, kudos to them if you can make, you know, if you can make these movies on a modest budget. The film's already earned, as a, you know, as I mentioned in the news segment, the movie's earned 35 million already internationally, so it's well on its way.
Yep.
So even though they call it the final chapter, we've heard that one before, kids.
Well, it's,
Yes.
hopefully they should
Right,
call
Baron? How many times? The final
They
chapter.
should rename
the-
it Resident Evil. Just fucking
mean-
kill it with fire. Like at this point.
What's that, Baron?
No, I mean, look, I'm a person who's seen the films and never played the games. So, as
Mhm.
far as I had a clue. I mean, I did know the games existed, but I didn't know anything about the games. So when I saw the films, they were different for me, from my experience, because I knew nothing of the games. I never played any of them. Shock to, you know, everybody out there. I don't play video games. But the films had a little part of horror in the first one, but they started to bring all this action into it, and it just started to melt away for what the hell I was watching.
Yup.
The first it did have honest horror elements in it. It had the zombies, you let them out, you know, we have these things. But you have the Red Queen who's playing games of her own. You've got
Right.
everybody's manipulating each other. You got the one guy trying to get out of the facility with supposedly the vaccine, but not the vaccine because it doesn't work. He wants to sell it to the highest bidder. You have these espionage and all these other little elements going on. When we get to part 2, we're completely off the tracks. I mean, it's, you know, people riding through cemeteries, busting through church windows on motorcycles, whatever the hell else is going on in these films.
Yup.
They just become complete and action sequences, one right after another. In filmmaking, there's a rule: when all else fails, blow shit up. Basically, I'm trying to tell you, after 5 minutes of watching the film, we're out of suggestions for the film. Let's just start blowing shit up.
Well, don't they give Alice superpowers in the
Yes.
second film?
Who the
Yeah,
fuck
she was-
cares?
she
The
was
fucking
injected with the
story
virus.
sucks.
No, may I finish here?
No.
We basically get Alice becomes the Terminator. I mean, the Terminator is able to access all the computers and everything. Suddenly, she's able to do it too. So now I've got a combination of Terminator movie and Alice with zombies who are now coming out of the ground, by the way. So, wait a minute. First, they're infected by some kind of virus, and now the dead are rising from the graveyards too. Why not? What the hell, right? Just make up all the rules as we go along.
Get
But-
biblical. That's fine. Let's get biblical.
But as we were saying earlier with the money, gross, yes, these films eked out their budgets, if you would, on here in the United States. When the film went worldwide market, that's where it scooped up everything else. For right now, not including the last one that's being released, they have made over $660 million at the box office alone. That's not
Wow.
including the DVD market, the cable rights, VOD rights,
Right.
nothing, not even all the toys and all that other shit out there. You're just talking box office. There you
That's
go.
amazing.
100. There's even actually, believe it or not, there's a department where you could go to certain firearm stores and buy guns, okay, that have been shown to be in the movies. There's actually a section, I've seen them in display cases. These guns were used in the Resident Evil movies. People buy them, or they wouldn't make them. So there you go.
I don't know, this whole final chapter thing, why do I get the feeling we're going to see Resident Evil: A New Beginning? You know?
Of course. Remember the Friday 13th? We have, what, 2 Final Friday movies, so I don't really buy it. I think it's going to get rebooted somehow.
Yeah,
Much to
that's,
Brian's
you know what? That's
chagrin.
exactly, that's the feeling that given those figures, you're talking about, almost $750 million. Why
just-
stop now? What's broken? What's broken?
My childhood.
Put. No, but strictly from a business
Nice.
standpoint. And you put 7 out, see how well it does, but really, it doesn't sound broken to me. Why end it?
It's, what, 4 years between this film coming out and the one before it, I think?
Right.
So, I mean, and the Afterlife movie, just to put it in perspective here, Afterlife film is the one that made the most money. It was made for, budget was $60 million, gross was over $60 million, worldwide figure, $296 million.
That's sensational.
Okay,
So people, a lot of people think the United States is the beginning, middle, and end of the movie business, and it is not by a long shot.
True.
no way. So I don't see really this is the final chapter. I see this as a maybe pausing point until they decide, well, let's reboot the entire series. Because why not? They do it with all the others, so I don't see it as the final.
So Brian,
Yeah.
think
I get
about
to
it.
relive it all over again. Oh, isn't that
Well,
wonderful?
it could be worse. It could be like a studio coming in saying, "Hey, what is something that everyone loves? Oh, let's take Batman and Superman and let's make a movie to whatever the fuck way we want to, and let's make it suck." That'd be a shame that happened.
And
then
that's the
made
conversation
sequels.
they have. That's the conversation they have around the table too. Is and by the way, guys, let's make it suck.
Look at the producers. You saw Mel Brooks, the producers. They make a shitload of money off of fucking disasters. That's
I
the
love that movie.
that's the producer way. If your
But you
movie,
can only
you make more money if the movie bombs.
Come on, damn it.
Yeah, it's springtime for Brian.
What is it? Nazis in Springtime? Yeah, Nazis in Springtime.
Springtime for Paul W.S.
But you can-
Anderson. Off of My Childhood.
But you can only sell 100% of anything. I'm wearing a cardboard belt. All right, never mind.
But no, they'll probably keep the Resident Evil series going, and they'll whatever. Fuck it, whatever. It's not my series anymore.
Kids at home, if you're watching this, don't buy this whole final chapter shit. We've seen this. They've tried to pull this bullshit on us before, kids.
It's happened before. It's happened
That's
before.
right. You listen to Hair Baron. You listen to Brian. You listen to your Uncle Rayzella. Don't be fooled. We've
Don't
seen
be
this shit
fooled.
before.
Don't be fooled.
Don't be fooled. This smells. The Baron's right. I smell a reboot.
Hopefully, it's for
We'll
the
see.
better.
We'll see. The Baron's gonna write that down on a piece of paper, seal it in an envelope,
Capcom
put
and
it
Sony,
away.
if you're listening, contact Brian and Wright for ideas and
I
suggestions
will write
for
the
next
movie
year's
for
Maybe
you.
the reboot will be the Netflix
Just
series
give me
that
like
we're talking
$10,000. I'll write the movie for you, and I'll do it in the most respectful way you can, as long as you don't hire Paul W.S. Anderson.
Don't lowball it. Don't lowball it. You'll
Fine,
enjoy it.
I will write the movie for $20,000, and 10% of ticket sales,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic.
You want the back end.
I want the back end. That's right.
Oh, you're gonna get the back end, all right?
Oh,
I think there's a kernel of truth, perhaps, to what the Baron is saying.
No, you're right.
I think so too.
But, But up next
We'll see.
Up next we have Baron is doing the razor burn. Baron, what do we have?
Oh, all right, here we go.
Razor burn.
Yeah. All right, here we go. That's all right. So we pretty much all agree then, because one of the questions was going to be, do you believe this is going to be the final Resident Evil film? I think we all can agree that it's not going to be the final one. when you have $660 million of a franchise already made. So we can all agree to that one.
Yes.
Brian?
I'll say I'm going to be curious. I'll be curious as to what the box office is, and we'll talk about it on the next show. We'll have the box office numbers for the next show.
There we go. Okay,
God damn it.
well, here we go. I'd like to start with something just really up everybody's line. Everybody's got smiles in their faces. Oh, this will be good.
Yeah.
All right, you ready? So if your loved one becomes infected with a virus that basically turns them into a zombie, would you A, kill them immediately, B, run away, or C, bring them other people so they can feed on them to keep them alive or deadish?
like
Jared's
this.
laughing. He gets to go first.
I like this. Unfortunately, my wife is probably going to kick me in the nuts for this, but I would kill her instantly. I got to save my dog, okay?
I like it. Man's best friend, damn it.
She'll go for the dog first. Sorry, honey.
All right, let's go with Morgan.
Well, in my situation, wait, are we? I'm just gonna pretend we're talking about my parents. So okay.
Your parents. Your
Yeah,
parents would be
this
just
be hypothetical.
Probably pull a Carl. I'd probably pull a Carl. I don't think my mom would want to live as a zombie. So
What about your father then?
I don't know. Probably.
There's a little pause
yeah,
there.
just bye.
Bye.
Or maybe I'll chain them up like Michonne. You know, use them. Yep.
Okay.
Nice.
Brian,
Nice.
Yes.
your answer, please.
All right. So would I kill them, run away, or keep them? Is what you're saying?
And you feed other people to them. So
You know what? That sounds like a fucking great time. I would definitely, I definitely have to go with C. Keep them and feed them. Just because I have a lot of people that I would love to feed to my loved ones, just to say that I did and that I could.
True.
Absolutely.
The
Ray.
writer dude.
I like
the
that
Resident
answer.
All right, Ray Zilla.
Well, you know, I'm with Brian because I believe that you need to play to people's strengths, and you know, I think that keeping my loved one, my long-suffering wife, bless her, I would keep her around. I would keep her around and use as defense if necessary, offense if necessary. She's a Latina. She's a tough cookie. She could give you a real hard time, and I'm sure as a member of the undead, you know, you would really, you know, you got to watch out for them chancletas. You never know. She's pretty rough, so I would keep her around. She's useful to this day.
Okay. As for myself, I would keep whoever I liked, if you would, around and have my shit list, which I actually do have. I have a shit list and a hit list. And depending on how I felt, you would be on one of those, you know, lists, perhaps. And I would use it as more of a defense because people would come to this house and go, "Oh, Jesus Christ, look at this guy. He's feeding people to the dead, and he has them laying around too." Kind of like, you know, living via the impaler. Just kind of stake people out and go, "I'm not going to fuck with this guy. He seems to be a little too happy right now in his world." But yes, it's honest truth, people. I do have a shit list and a hit list. The purge can happen when it's time, and I got the list.
Do you keep the shit list in Google Docs? Can I see this?
I do have the shit list. I also have a kind of a like list. There are people on that who get to live, but you can slide right off of that like list over the shit list real quick. And hit list, I'll tell you this much: the hit list, folks, is measured out by miles to my house. I got it all mapped out where you are to where I'm going. So the mayor just gasses up the car and says, "I said I've had it. Time to work on population control."
So what list am I on, Baron?
Huh?
What list am I on?
What for what?
The like, shit, or hit.
For Brian?
Yes.
Brian's on luck right now, but he is going down the scale.
Oh.
But don't worry, Brian. As long as you're on the list, you're fine. There's only about 25 people on the list. You should be happy.
Brian, make sure the check clears. That's all I could tell you. That's my advice.
Yeah, Brian, don't send it to a wrong location next time. You know.
That was 2 years ago.
I haven't forgotten. Damn it. I don't forget. Damn it. All right. Here's one for everybody. Why do you think the series for Resident Evil has been so popular? We'll have Brian go last. He'll have a rant. Rayzilla.
Why do I think it's so popular?
Well, yes, it's a
You know, that's a really great question when you consider that the gaming franchise and that narrative is so different from the movie franchise. That's a really good question. I mean, you know, is it the casting? Is it the action? I mean, we certainly know it's not the writing, but nonetheless, these films are successful. Wow, you know, sometimes there is some things that you just can't explain. Wow, I really can't. I'm sure it's not one thing. The international market. Maybe it's Mila Jovovich that has a stronger presence internationally. I'd be curious to see how her other films perform internationally. Maybe she's just a bigger draw overseas than she is here in the United States. But you know, the two franchises, the two arms of the franchise, I should call it, are so vastly different that I really couldn't tell you, because if the movies were such a strong reflection of the games, then you know we would have our answer, much like the Marvel universe. I'm not surprised that the Marvel universe does so well financially, because they show enormous respect to the source material, and that's not the case with the Resident Evil films. Where the source material is more or less a guideline, if you will. Terrific question. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure it's a number of things.
Morgan.
Well, seeing as how I have not seen any of the movies or played any of the games, I have absolutely no clue.
Good answer. That's probably the best one.
Yay!
So far, Morgan's got the top answer. Jared.
Beat the shit out of my long-winded bullshit.
If I had to pinpoint any one thing, Mila Jovovich probably has something to do with it, and the fact that she doesn't wear much throughout most of the movies.
Oh Lord.
and Ali Larder, she's also in the movies and doesn't wear a whole lot. That helps, you know, for the male perspective. But you have zombies, you have lots of action, guns, explosions, like you were saying earlier, Baron. Just the whole 9 yards. Like,
it is a buffet of elements, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, Brian's dying over here. All right, Brian, your answer. I know you got one.
Yeah, it's popular because of the name Resident Evil. I think that there was a lot of people who played the original Resident Evil series, and they grew up with the Resident Evil movies. That being said, there's people who jumped on the Resident Evil bandwagon, who never played the video games but got into the movies. And then now that it's Resident Evil is such a household name, everyone started getting into it, and yeah, that's why Resident Evil is so popular, unfortunately.
Okay, and as for my answer, it is a combination of everything. It literally is a film that crosses all the different genres, putting them all into the same package, and therefore it has mass appeal. The film is a film that's trying to take the Resident Evil format of POV, called point of view or point of video. It would be, say, a Hotel Inferno that's recently came out last year, I think it was, which puts the characters into first person for the movies. It works well with a lot of gamers, but it's not working well with the core audience, just to throw it out there. All right, third question.
You know, I can't help but feel like, you know, I feel like there's some similarity between these films and the Underworld films in how they perform. That these sequels keep coming, yet
they still make money.
yeah, they still make money, and they seem to have a better, not necessarily better, but a strong international presence. These movies just seem to work, and they don't spend a lot to make the underworld films. I think we had brought it up on another show, that the budgets were somewhere in the 50 million range, 40 to 50 million dollar range, to make one of those. So the opportunity to make that money back is better than when you're, as opposed to spending 150 200 million dollars. Then you got to hope for an event of the year in order to make your money back. Star Wars type money, fuck you money, you know.
Yeah, but Underworld was the better series.
Yeah. In the Underworld, we got what, the vampires.
Underworld certainly is stronger as far as horror goes, and maybe that's another series that we can tackle at some point here at the Syndicate.
Yeah.
Blood Wars just got released. So.
Ray
That's right.
Merrick said he thinks Resident Evil helped bring back the zombie genre and help it evolve. The games gave us survival horror.
He's right. You can't help but see where The Walking Dead took some cues from Resident Evil. 'Cause, obviously, Resident Evil predates Walking Dead by quite a bit. Right up to the third film, even I would say that you can't. If you go back and look at the first three films, anyway, you can't help but see where Walking Dead was inspired.
Okay. I got question 3 and 4 here, so hopefully we have time for both. We definitely have to have time for question 4. It's insane. I got question 4 when I'm drunk, so that should be really good. So basically, how does the Resident Evil zombies different from other zombie flicks? Are they just straight up kind of zombie flicks, or with this new version that we have from 28 Days Later, Infections? What's everybody's opinion? Do you think they're the same kind of zombie path, or are we breaking out and coming up with a new path in zombie genre?
Well, for its time,
First,
for its time, it was definitely different.
and now have we've gone into a spiraling downward cycle in it?
In Resident Evil, or in zombie films in general?
Zombie films in general. I mean, have we patterned it all
Well,
the way?
we'll see with World War Z if it jumps the shark or not. If we've had enough, Walking Dead. We've talked about it on this show before. Walking Dead's ratings were in decline all through last season, so perhaps.
Okay, so anyone else can just jump in. I know that Morgan hasn't really seen the Resident Evil films, so we'll
Yeah,
just
nothing.
don't worry. The fourth question you'll do really well on, Morgan. Trust me.
Oh God. Okay.
Zombie films are oversaturated and surprisingly still popular right now. So I mean, it's still gonna make its money. But if you're asking in terms of the virus, like if it's more of like a rage virus versus a zombie virus, I think it's more zombie with the Resident Evil films.
Okay.
As opposed to a 28 Days or something like that.
Where they still have mental capacity, but they're just crazed, raged humans.
Hey, you don't need to talk about me like that, Jared. I understand completely.
The Baron has a thick skin.
Ryan.
I think that they're the same. I think that I think the series needs to rely on classic Romero zombies, in order to maintain their self-respected audience,
Integrity.
and then the rest of the series is bullshit. Let's face it. People hear Resident Evil, they want to see zombies. Why would we change the zombies and make them any other make them any different? I mean, fuck Resident Evil movies. That's all I gotta say.
All right. Our last question.
And just so you guys all know, sorry to cut you off, I like the movies for the most part. I am not one of all this board.
All right. Our last question. Right where I was completely smashed off of Southern Comfort, the 100 proof. Here we go. In the Resident Evil movies, we have zombie dogs. What other animals would you like to see zombify so they can eat your face off and tear off your privates?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, Jarrett is into it now. Go for it.
I want to say a tiger. Any type of feline large cat would be very, very, very ferocious.
It's all zombified up.
Yes.
You wouldn't mind being
Well,
eaten alive by a tiger that's zombied.
yeah. I'd let it happen. No, probably not. God damn it.
Morgan. I told you it was going to be a different question, Morgan.
I don't know about my answer. I think I know Brian's answer, but
We know Brian's answer is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, Brian. Brian's going last. No, Brian's going last. He's all backdooring it right now. He's all up for it. All right. So, Morgan, just pick an animal for all I care that you want to have yourself torn apart by.
Oh,
What
God.
is it? Winnie the Bird? The bow
Hamsters.
runner? What? What is it?
Hamster?
A hamster?
Hamsters.
Hamsters?
All
You
right.
did.
Oh,
That'd be a
God.
very slow death.
Yes, it would be. Uh, all right. Ray Zilla. Look at him all nestled up to the camera. There you go.
Yes, nice. Yeah, so you can get it in HD in all its glory. Let me think. Because I'm almost I'm almost in line with I think what Brian is going to say. But I would like to see. I would like to see zombie cows. Some kind of unholy cow, if you will. Some sort of bovine nightmare that something with the udders, perhaps. I think you can make a genuinely terrifying, yet bundesly absurd film with zombie cows.
Of course, especially if we don't know they're zombie cows and we eat their innards.
Exactly right. Now, I have to tell you, one of my all-time favorite films is Black Sheep.
I love that movie.
The Australian film. I had the pleasure of watching
Yeah.
that in a screening with Tony Timpone, and the two of us laughed like idiots
That
throughout
movie's
the film.
hilarious.
I was begging the projectionist to just pause it for 2 seconds so I can gather some air. I laughed so hard through that film, and that was Zombie Sheep. And friends, if you have not seen Black Sheep,
Write it down.
write it number
See,
one, write it down, and then when you're done watching the Horror Syndicate, go pick up Black Sheep. It is one of the funniest, wildly creative, well executed international films you're gonna see. It is wonderful movie. But for me, yes, I would like to see and I have the title, Unholy Cow.
All right, Brian.
As much as everyone would love to see a zombie Harambe,
That's okay, Brian.
I think that
Harambe.
I
It's
think
Harambe.
I think what we
I've
need,
got it, Brian.
yeah, I think what we need is zombie penguins. I'm not talking about your average penguins that like hobble around and watch each other die while holding eggs. I'm talking about the fucking penguins from Happy Feet. I think that a penguin thriller, not the genre, but the Michael Jackson music video. I feel like the penguin thriller is in need. I feel like we deserve to have zombie penguins dancing to show tunes. Because part of my personality is not only a horror fan, but I love me some musicals. And I think that if we
I'm
have
down
some
for it.
zombie penguins dancing to El DeBarge's The Rhythm of the Night, I think that we could have ourselves a good old time, and then watch these penguins fucking decay and dance in front of everyone and scare the shit out of children, and hopefully scare the shit out of Paul W.S. Anderson so he never touches this franchise ever again. Piece of shit.
So
Sounds good.
let's
I'm in.
set the table then. It's a Arctic outpost with Paul W. Anderson staying in this Arctic outpost, and the zombie
He's writing the next
zombie
Resident
breakout
Evil movie.
occurs amongst the penguin population.
And they're dancing to El DeBarge's Rhythm of the Night.
Yep.
Rhythm and Anderson can hear Rhythm of the Night,
In which he masturbates
Playing in the-
furiously.
playing in the
Dancing to
background.
the morning light.
Playing in the background. Brian, tell me, how did the penguins attack the cabin?
Well, first, Paul W.S. Anderson is masturbating furiously.
Ah,
Oh God.
And they kind of catch him by surprise, and he's afraid that they're gonna eat off his penis. So in retaliating against the penguins eating off his penis, he in fact rips off his own penis and shoves it up his ass. And
okay.
and then that's your sequel to Final Chapter.
You totally took a left turn on that
Oh
one.
my God.
No, I'm just making up all this bullshit because you know my fucking answer. It was a zombie Harambe. I couldn't hide that.
Harambe.
It was
Harambe.
Harambe. It was Harambe. I couldn't hide that, so I just went to this. I went to this whole story.
All right, so then please walk me up to how he becomes a zombie.
Zombie Harambe.
Yes.
Okay, well, Zombie
Harambe.
Harambe, our Lord and Savior Harambe, they bury him in a cave, and they put a rock over this cave. And on Easter, Harambe walks out of the cave,
Oh God.
and just like our Lord and Savior, Harambe,
Yeah.
The passion of the Harambe.
the
Okay.
Passion of Mel Brooks, and Harambe is making sure that there's no more Resident Evil sequels.
Any more questions, Baron?
by murders in the Rue Morgue styling everybody.
I don't know. I think I had the best answer. Zombie hamsters. That seems pretty entertaining.
You know,
to me.
Morgan's answer, the zombie hamsters. Yes, that would be a very long.
Oh,
It'd be
God.
like 6 hours. It'd be like 6 hours
Hamster
of death.
turns into a zombie.
Long,
out.
agonizing, but adorable death.
Yeah.
And there was actually a horror movie called Night of the Hamsters, or Night of the Attack of the Killer Hamsters. It was a short film, about 18 minutes long, and I did see it. So,
Really?
Are you
yes,
serious?
You did?
it
Oh
is
my
a
God.
short film called that. Yes, I actually think it got a sequel. In fact, another short film sequel to it. So I'll have to find it for you, Morgan, and send it to you. So that was our fourth and final question.
Ah,
This episode has been brought to you
Thanks.
by Paul W.S. Anderson and the movie Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Fuck my life.
Mortal Kombat.
All right, well, thank you for joining us on this wonderful episode of the Horror Syndicate Live, where we covered everything Resident Evil. If you want to find me, I'm on Facebook under Brian Enright. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at The Horror Jew. Baron, where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter under Baron_Craze. Also looking up on Facebook, again, Baron Craze. And of course, the Baron's Trip is on Friday nights at 6:30. Actually, this week we are changing it to 5:30. I have a meeting I got to go to on Friday night. So, and Baron's Trip Elation Horrors, 7 o'clock Saturday night.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
Baron, Baron? You getting the charges dropped? Is that what's going on?
Actually, no. If you want to know the real reason why we're moving the show up for the next couple of weeks on Friday nights at 5:30, as many of you know that I do a fundraiser for MS, and I'm getting geared up to do that again, 4th year running. So I have a lot of events I have to go to get fundraising all set up. That's the reason we're moving it up.
That's
Attaboy.
wonderful,
Good for you.
man. Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Jared, where can we find you?
You guys can follow me on the face space at Jared Letourneau, or follow me on Twitter as zombie_survivor.
All right, thank you very much, Jared. Morgan, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Morgan_Joel_S.
Awesome, and last but not least, we have Rayzilla. Rayzilla, where can we find you?
Hey there, kiddies. You know, if you have the irresistible urge to follow me on Twitter, and God help you if you do, you could find me at RayzillaNJ. Back to you, Brian.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. I know we didn't cover everything Resident Evil. They're like all the little nooks and crannies, but we covered a majority of it. And yeah, but thank you for hanging out with us, and we'll hope to see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.